Walk into enough dealerships right now and you start seeing the same pattern. Some bikes sit, some get talked about, and some keep finding buyers, even when the industry keeps insisting riders want something bigger, faster, and more expensive. Royal Enfield is becoming one of those bikes. That should raise eyebrows, because for a long time this brand was never supposed to be the answer for the modern motorcycle market. But now riders are looking at price, weight, comfort, maintenance, and long-term ownership much harder than they used to. And suddenly, the old formula is not landing the same way. Today, we are breaking down why so many people are suddenly buying Royal Enfield, what the bigger brands failed to see coming, and why this shift may be exposing a deeper problem across the motorcycle industry. Watch until the end, because once you connect all the dots, this stops looking like a trend and starts looking like a correction. Something doesn't add up. The numbers back it up. One side of the industry is slowing down, with sales dropping year over year, while another is quietly moving over 1 million units globally in a single cycle. That gap isn't normal. That's not just competition. That's a shift. And it doesn't line up with what you were always told. Bigger engines, more power, more features, those were supposed to win. That was the direction everything was moving. But now, you're seeing riders walk past machines that cost more, do more, promise more, and choose something simpler without hesitation. This isn't about one brand suddenly becoming better. It's about everything else becoming harder to live with. Because if the old formula still worked, nothing would be changing. Dealers wouldn't be sitting on inventory, riders wouldn't be hesitating, and you wouldn't be seeing this kind of split across the same market. So the real question isn't why one brand is rising, it's why the rest stopped connecting. Which leads directly to the pressure point most riders felt before anything else started to shift. When riding stopped making financial sense, it didn't happen overnight. Prices didn't jump all at once. They crept up year after year until one day you started doing the math instead of just signing the paper. What used to be a straightforward purchase turned into a long-term financial decision. Monthly payments stretched further. Insurance followed the same path. Even basic ownership started carrying a weight that wasn't there before. At some point, it stopped feeling like a machine you owned and started feeling like something you were paying off. That shift matters more than most people realize. Because once riding starts feeling like a financial obligation, the entire mindset changes. You don't ride the same way. You don't enjoy it the same way. You start thinking about miles in terms of cost instead of experience. And it's not just the price of the bike, it's everything tied to it. Higher parts costs, higher service costs, higher risk if something goes wrong. The margin for error shrinks, and the freedom that used to come with riding starts getting boxed in. You can see it in conversations now. People aren't just asking what a bike does, they're asking what it's going to cost them long term. That wasn't the culture before. Because there was a time when you bought a motorcycle, rode it hard, fixed what needed fixing, and kept going. Now, there's hesitation built into the process before the key even turns. And when enough riders start hesitating at the same time, the market doesn't just slow down, it shifts. Still, money alone doesn't explain everything, because even riders who can afford it are stepping back for a different reason. If this breakdown is helping you see the market differently, hit like and subscribe. Share your experience below and add what you are seeing out there. Because real rider insight matters more than any dealership pitch when money is on the line, when the machines got ahead of the rider. There's another change that doesn't show up on a price tag, but you feel it the moment you throw a leg over certain bikes. They got heavier, they got faster, they got more demanding. On paper, that sounds like progress, more power, better suspension, more capability. But in the real world, that capability comes with a cost. The margin for mistakes gets smaller. The effort required gets higher. And the comfort level starts to depend more on how much you can handle rather than how much you want to enjoy. You don't ride the same way you did decades ago. But the bikes kept moving in the opposite direction. That's not about fear. It's about fit. The machine and the rider stopped meeting in the middle. For a lot of experienced riders, the goal was never to prove anything. It was to ride comfortably, confidently, and consistently. But when machines start demanding more input, more attention, more correction, that balance starts to slip. Even simple things add up. Seat height changes how confident you feel at a stop. Weight changes how easy it is to move the bike around. Power delivery changes how relaxed you are in traffic. None of these things matter on a spec sheet, but they matter every second you're on the road. And when enough of those small mismatches stack together, the ride stops feeling natural. It becomes something you manage instead of something you settle into. That's when riders start looking elsewhere, not because they've lost interest, but because they're trying to find something that fits again. But even that doesn't fully explain the shift, because there's one more layer that builds on top of everything else. If you're planning to spend real miles on a machine like this, check the description. The gear and accessories listed there are built for comfort, reliability, and long rides, not just showroom appeal. When ownership became work, the ride itself was only part of the experience. What surrounded it started changing too. Maintenance used to be straightforward. You knew what needed to be done, and you either handled it yourself or had someone you trusted take care of it. Now, more systems mean more complexity. More complexity means more dependency. And that dependency usually leads back to the dealer. Electronics added another layer. Diagnostics, sensors, software updates, things you can't see, can't adjust, and sometimes can't even understand without specialized tools. That changes the relationship between rider and machine in a quiet but important way. It's not the miles that wear you down, it's everything around them. Scheduling service instead of just doing it. Waiting on parts instead of sourcing them. Relying on systems instead of instincts. Over time, those small inconveniences stop being small. You start planning around the bike instead of the bike fitting into your life. And once that happens, the sense of freedom that riding used to bring begins to fade. That's when the question changes. It's no longer about what the bike can do. It's about how much it asks from you in return. And when enough riders reach that point at the same time, they don't quit riding. They start looking for something that brings the balance back. From there, the story shifts, because once the experience starts breaking down, something else eventually steps in to fill that space. The numbers that should raise eyebrows. Look past the headlines and focus on what's actually moving. Global motorcycle sales have been uneven, with several legacy brands struggling to maintain volume while others quietly expand. One company, in particular, pushed past 1 million units in a single fiscal cycle, while brands with deeper histories and higher price tags combined did not match that output. That gap isn't about marketing, it's about alignment. In markets like Europe, South America, and parts of the United States, demand patterns are splitting. Premium models are sitting longer, while certain mid-weight machines are moving quickly, sometimes before they even hit the floor. That kind of turnover isn't random. It reflects where buyers are actually landing after weighing their options. The age shift tells the same story. One side of the industry is watching its average rider climb into the 50s and beyond, while another is pulling in riders in their 20s and 30s without losing older ones who still ride regularly. That overlap is rare. It means the product is meeting riders at different stages without forcing them to adapt too much. None of this looks like a short-term spike. It behaves like a steady change in direction. Numbers don't carry emotion, and they don't exaggerate. When they move this consistently across regions, they're pointing to something structural. Seen from that angle, this isn't noise, it's movement. Follow that movement backward, and it leads to a company that didn't stumble into position. It rebuilt itself to fit it. The comeback that was built, not given. There was a time when this brand wasn't part of any serious conversation. In the early 2000s, production numbers were low, quality was inconsistent, and shutting the entire operation down was a real option. Oil leaks, mechanical failures, and weak components weren't rare complaints. They were expected. Riders who dealt with those machines remember exactly how unpredictable they could be. These bikes used to have problems, and riders haven't forgotten that. What changed wasn't image first, it was process. Factories were consolidated. Quality control systems were rebuilt from the ground up. Critical components that once failed at unacceptable rates were redesigned and tested until those failures dropped to a fraction of what they had been. External engineering partnerships brought in new engine platforms that replaced outdated designs with something more reliable without losing the character riders expected. It didn't happen quickly. It took years of incremental correction. Each generation addressed specific weaknesses, and over time, the pattern shifted from recurring issues to steady improvement. That kind of progress doesn't erase the past, but it does start to rebuild confidence. At the same time, the company made a decision that most others wouldn't have made. Instead of spreading resources across multiple segments, it narrowed its focus and invested heavily in doing a few things consistently well. That concentration created stability where there had been uncertainty. Trust wasn't handed back overnight. It had to be earned, one model, one fix, one improvement at a time. And once that foundation was stable, the next decision became even more important because it defined what the bikes would and would not become. The decision to stay in the middle. While much of the industry pushed toward higher performance and more specialized machines, this company held its position in the middle of the market. Engine sizes stayed within a narrow range. Power figures remained controlled. The focus stayed on balance rather than extremes. They didn't try to win the race. They stepped out of it. That choice shaped everything else. By avoiding the pressure to chase maximum horsepower or cutting-edge features, development stayed grounded in real-world use. Weight remained manageable. Power delivery stayed predictable. The riding experience stayed approachable without feeling stripped down. In a market where many machines are designed to impress on paper, this approach shifted the emphasis back to how a bike feels over time. Not in a quick test ride, but over hours on the road, in traffic, in changing conditions. That's where restraint starts to show its value. It also simplified production. Fewer platforms, fewer extreme variations, and a clearer design direction made it easier to maintain consistency across models. That consistency feeds directly into reliability, cost control, and long-term ownership. Intentional limitation isn't the same as compromise. It's a way of defining what matters and ignoring what doesn't. For riders who aren't interested in pushing limits every time they ride, that middle ground becomes more appealing than the edges. It offers capability without pressure, performance without excess. That positioning alone wouldn't have created the current surge, though. It needed one more element to turn it into something that changes behavior. The price that changes behavior. Price has always influenced decisions, but at a certain point, it starts to reshape them entirely. When a full lineup sits within a range that many riders can realistically reach without stretching finances, the conversation shifts from aspiration to possibility. Real-world comparisons make the difference clear. A machine that delivers a satisfying riding experience at roughly half the cost of some competitors doesn't just compete, it redefines expectations. The gap isn't only in the initial purchase, it carries through insurance, maintenance, and long-term ownership. This isn't about getting more bike. It's about needing less from one. When the cost of entry drops to a level that feels manageable, hesitation fades. Riders who might have delayed a purchase start moving forward. Those returning after time away find an easier path back in. Even experienced riders begin to reconsider what they actually need versus what they were told to want. That shift in mindset spreads quickly. Once a few riders make the move and share their experience, others follow, not because they're chasing a trend, but because the decision starts to make practical sense. It changes how bikes are compared. Instead of asking which machine offers the most features or the highest output, the question becomes which one fits best into everyday life without creating friction. That's a different standard, and it favors simplicity over excess. Over time, that change in behavior feeds back into the market itself. Demand grows where the barrier is lower, and it softens where the barrier remains high. That feedback loop reinforces the position of anything that fits within reach. even with that advantage in place, cost alone doesn't explain why riders stay once they've made the switch. The feeling that came back. There's something riders notice almost immediately, and it's not written anywhere on a spec sheet. It shows up in how the bike responds at low speed, how it settles into a rhythm, how it communicates through the bars and the seat without needing interpretation. It's not dramatic. It's not overwhelming. It's familiar in a way that doesn't need explanation. Some machines don't impress you, they settle you. That difference matters more than most people admit. A lot of modern bikes are built to perform at levels few riders ever use. They feel sharp, precise, and capable. But they can also feel distant. The connection runs through layers of refinement that smooth everything out. What you gain in performance, you sometimes lose in feedback. Here, the feedback comes back. Not in a raw or uncontrolled way, but in a steady, predictable rhythm. The engine pulses are noticeable. The shifts feel mechanical. The ride isn't filtered down to the point where everything feels the same. Instead, each input carries a response you can recognize. It's not nostalgia in the sense of chasing the past. It's recognition of something that never really stopped working. The kind of riding experience where you don't have to think about what the bike is doing, because you can feel it directly. That sense of familiarity lowers the barrier to staying on the bike longer. You don't get off feeling like you've been managing a system. You step away, feeling like you've been part of the process. Once that connection is established, it changes how the ride is perceived, and it opens the door to another shift that builds on top of it. Riding without interference. The next difference isn't about what the bike adds. It's about what it leaves. Out. Modern machines often come layered with systems designed to assist, correct, and protect. Traction control, ride modes, electronic adjustments, all of it aimed at making riding safer or more adaptable. Those systems have their place, and for some riders, they add confidence. For others, they create distance. Here, the experience moves in the opposite direction. Fewer systems stand between input and response. The throttle connects more directly. The braking feels immediate. The feedback loop shortens. Not better or worse, just more honest. That honesty changes how control is perceived. Instead of negotiating with settings or modes, the rider interacts with the machine in a straightforward way. What you give is what you get. There's less interpretation involved, less reliance on unseen corrections. For experienced riders, that simplicity can feel more natural. It removes the need to second guess what the bike might be doing behind the scenes. The focus shifts back to the road, the conditions, and the rider's own judgment. It reduces mental load. Without layers of adjustment, decisions stay simple speed. Position, timing matter most. That clarity doesn't show in a quick ride. It builds over time. The longer you ride without interference, the more it stands out, gradually attracting riders who approach motorcycling from a different starting point. If you want more honest breakdowns like this, subscribe now. No hype, no fluff, just real rider perspective and hard truths about what is happening in the market so you can make better decisions before your next move. The new riders. Entering the market. A noticeable part of the shift isn't just who is staying, it's who is coming in. Over the past few years, a wave of new riders entered the market under very different circumstances than previous generations. They weren't stepping into a culture built around speed or competition. They were looking for something personal, something that fit into their lives without overwhelming them. They're not chasing speed, they're chasing experience. That difference shows up in how they choose their first bike. Instead of aiming for the highest performance they can manage, they look for something approachable, something that doesn't demand immediate mastery, something that lets them build confidence without pressure. Affordability plays a role, but it's not the only factor. Simplicity matters just as much. A machine that is easy to understand, easy to ride, and easy to maintain becomes a natural entry point. It lowers the risk of making a mistake and raises the likelihood of sticking with it. These riders arrive without the same expectations, building their own reference point and shaping what they value. As more choose this path, demand grows without replacing experienced riders, creating overlap. One group finds familiarity, the other accessibility, yet both land on the same machines. That overlap strengthens demand and builds a foundation that goes beyond the motorcycle itself, the part you can't engineer. Beyond performance, beyond pricing, beyond design choices, there's another layer that develops over time. It doesn't come from the factory, it comes from the riders themselves. When enough people share a similar experience, they start to connect around it. Group rides form, events grow, conversations shift from comparison to shared understanding. That's where something like a community takes shape. You see it in parking lots, not advertisements. Rows of similar bikes, different riders, same general approach to riding. There's less emphasis on showing off and more on being part of something recognizable. The machines become a common language rather than a point of competition. That kind of environment reinforces itself. New riders feel welcomed. Experienced riders recognize something familiar, and belonging stays high. This growth isn't controlled from the top. It spreads through rides and shared moments. Over time, it becomes identity, turning ownership into participation and loyalty. Still, none of it holds if the machines themselves fail to support it. The question of trust. For all the momentum and attention, one question still sits underneath everything else. Can these machines be trusted over time? That question doesn't disappear just because sales are strong or demand is rising. Riders who have been around long enough remember what these bikes used to be. Oil leaks, electrical issues, inconsistent build quality. Those memories don't fade quickly. Better than before, but not beyond question. The difference now is that the pattern has changed. Over the past several years, updates have focused on stability rather than reinvention. New engine platforms reduced vibration that once made longer rides uncomfortable. Component quality improved to the point where failures became less common instead of expected. Assembly processes tightened, and feedback loops between markets and production lines shortened. It's not perfection. Recalls and complaints still happen across the industry. But direction matters, and the trend is toward consistency. For many riders, that's enough to reconsider. Trust doesn't return instantly. It builds ride after ride. Once that foundation holds, attention shifts from durability concerns to how far the operation behind these machines can realistically grow. This isn't a small operation anymore. What started as a focused effort has expanded into something much larger. Production capacity now reaches well over 1 million units annually, supported by multiple factories operating at scale. New facilities are being developed to push that number closer to 2 million within the next few years. That level of output places the company among the largest motorcycle manufacturers in the world. Assembly operations extend beyond a single country. Plants in regions like South America and Southeast Asia allow for local distribution without the burden of heavy import costs. At the same time, development centers staffed with engineers from different backgrounds continue refining new models and updating existing ones. This is not a niche story anymore. Scale changes how a brand operates, improving parts availability, shortening service timelines, stabilizing pricing, and increasing visibility across markets. With that visibility comes pressure. Growth must be maintained, quality must match volume, and expansion adds new variables. Still, stronger infrastructure supports consistency, allowing global competition, and that scale shift begins influencing how the rest of the industry responds over time. What the industry misread. For years, much of the motorcycle industry moved in a single direction: larger engines, higher performance, more features, higher prices. The assumption was that riders would continue following that path, stepping up from one level to the next without hesitation. That assumption didn't hold. Aging demographics meant that the core customer base wasn't being replaced at the same rate. Younger riders entered the market with different expectations, while experienced riders began reassessing what they actually needed. At the same time, pricing continued to climb, creating a gap between what was offered and what felt reasonable. Somewhere along the way, the rider stopped being the focus. Product decisions leaned towards specifications and margins over everyday usability, while marketing emphasized performance and prestige. The result impressed on paper, but missed real life. As that gap widened, it created space for something simpler. Not new, just practical. That shift formed gradually, pushing riders away until the distance became clear, forcing a broader realization about how the market had truly shifted. The truth that's been building for years. Looking at it all together, the pattern becomes clear. This wasn't a sudden surge driven by a single factor. It was the result of multiple small changes stacking over time, each one nudging the market in a slightly different direction. This didn't happen suddenly. It built slowly, one higher price, one heavier machine, one extra feature nobody asked for. Each change made sense on its own. Each one followed a logic tied to progress, competition, or innovation. But together, they moved the experience further away from what many riders actually wanted. At the same time, another approach stayed consistent. Simpler machines, manageable performance, accessible ownership. It stayed in its lane. Eventually, the paths crossed. That's when something simpler made sense. Riders didn't need convincing. They saw it, chose it, and kept riding. They didn't change. They simply stopped adjusting altogether. At the end of the day, this shift is not really about one brand winning. It is about riders stepping back and asking what actually makes sense again. Simpler machines, manageable costs, and a ride that feels right without all the extra weight. That is what is pulling people in. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ridden one? Or are you considering it? Drop your thoughts below, hit like if this made you see things differently, and subscribe for more straight, no BS breakdowns like this.